Good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. A bit of a quiet weekend. I must have had a hell of a party in my sleep, though, because you can hear my voice. But the Silverlight Show does go on. The wife and the child and myself started watching movies. And I started to realize some pretty ridiculous plot elements. First one that came across my view, the wife loves James Bond. And so I can plug in pretty much any James Bond movie and she's happy. So I grabbed one of the Pierce Brosnan's ones, and it was the one where, and I'm sorry, I'm terrible with titles. Um, the media mogul is trying to start World War III to boost ratings. Now, hold on a second here. This is a terrible plan. The world's worst businessman would look at this and say, hey, where's my future profits? Where's my future audience? And I think they addressed that in the movie. But, it was such a flimsy explanation. Who came up with this? Who green lighted this? Who said, oh, yes, this plot works. To heck with all the other ones. Let's go with this. That was the minor offender. It's an enjoyable movie. I mean, Eon Entertainment did their jobs and they created an enjoyable spectacle, but it's one that you gotta turn your brain off and you gotta allow yourself to believe the impossible, because I don't think any billionaire really wants the world to burn, because they want to live through that as well. And unfortunately, your $1 billion are worth nothing if money doesn't exist, if there's nobody to trade with. Like, this is basic economics. If you find yourself on Mars and you got a perfectly good settlement and everything, you got $1 billion, and there's nobody to buy anything from or sell anything, that briefcase full of your money just might as well be a briefcase full of rocks. That's all the good it's going to do you. So, those kind of movies, and they show up more than once, are just implausible. Even the bad guys that want to destroy the world, since the 90s, they've been masking that in eco-terrorism and saying, oh, I want to restart the world to make a better place. You might want to think of a better plan, because humans are part of the ecosystem. That's another story about humans being part of the ecosystem, but we'll get there. But I actually managed to fix Star Trek Into Darkness. My wife also being a big Benedict Cumberbatch fan, and I admit I enjoy seeing him act. The movie's plot is just implausible. I'm not going to say impossible, but implausible. So, they find this 300-year-old Superman, whatever you want to call him, who's got genetically enhanced intelligence. They've got, genetically enhanced reflexes. They're close to a perfect human being as you can get. Basically, Batman. Except we all know Khan, and he's a little on the psychotic side. That's believable. The technology for that has been in talk of development for quite some time, and maybe 300 years from the future they would have it figured out. That's where the plausibility ends. So, this Admiral Dude, whoever Admiral Dude is, and I know this movie is forever old, but, I watch movies to entertain myself rather than to think most of the time. But this Admiral Dude decides to thaw out this 300-year-old, person and have him develop weapons. Okay, let's go back to Napoleon, who was no dummy. And let's even give Napoleon the advantage of having his engineer corps, or whatever his equivalent was to research and development, and ask him to reverse engineer a Harrier jump jet. He's, again, no slight against Napoleon. He's not going to have a clue. He might be decent for tactics, although you'd have to spend months or years tutoring him in the use of air power. Just like in the original Star Trek II, when Spock observes Khan thinks in two dimensions, and that's how they're able to beat him. Because Napoleon wouldn't know anything but air forces, combined arms assaults. That's beyond his range. If he spent time and tutored him, he might become a very good general. Well, he is a very good general, his record proves it. But on the modern battlefield, a cavalry charge is just going to be a bad piece of news for that night 6 o'clock news. So, you know how you fix Star Trek Into Darkness? You don't have the Admiral decide we're going to make Khan a super scientist. What you do is you make him your super soldier. And then you can still have Spock, the original Leonard Nimoy Spock, tell Zachary Quinto, Khan is very disturbed. So the admiral's basically cloning a bunch of emotionally unstable troops, giving them weapons because the admiral's motivation is he wants to fight the Klingons. The Klingons are incredibly good warriors on the battlefield, hand to hand stuff like that. Khan's a perfect antidote. And you can keep him frozen in their pods, thaw them out. When you drop to the planet, you drop them down there, then you get the hell out of their way. That's how you fix that. And he even explains what he's doing on the Klingon homeworld. He's doing his job, as he was told. Now, it doesn't create a lot of conflict with the Enterprise crew. So what I was thinking, in that situation, you have him get into philosophical debates with the Zachary Quinto Spock. Because the old Spock, yeah, we know why he's pissed off, but I don't think the old Spock was in any shape to be doing action scenes. I don't think it was very long after they filmed it that he passed away, which is a shame. But for Zachary Quinto, I can see the arguments between them. Let the characters come out. Khan saying, power flows from the barrel of a gun. And, Zachary Quinto would say, if you have to use force to enforce your logic, it is illogical. Now, I just fixed Star Trek Into Darkness, and it wasn't hard. I just changed the motivation. And this is what surprises me. I'm not going to go on today saying, oh, movies are terrible. No, movies are evolving. For those of you that are old enough, you might remember the 1980s action hero genre. Pretty much, I think Batman brought that to an end. But I'm not necessarily thinking of movies like Predator, where Schwarzenegger is dousing himself in mud and going hand to hand with an alien being. No. I'm thinking more of The Last Boy Scout that had a plot. And it tells itself over time. Bruce Willis tells a good story. Damon Wayans tells a good story. Speaking of which, whatever happened to Damon Wayans? Did he make all of his money and he's living comfortably? I hope so. Because a lot of actors that disappear off the scene, there's a reason they're not coming back. And the two general reasons are they made all their money or they lost all their money and are currently in prison serving time for drugs, violence, all this sort of thing. So again, I'm hoping he made his money and retired. Don't know whether he's a good person or not, but that's always the better story. In my heart. I don't wish harm on anybody. Well, if you do something bad, yeah, let the court sort it out. And if you don't, okay, you might be a jerk, but at the same token, I wish you peace and prosperity and stuff like that. But with the movies that are coming out right now, the biggest problem was Marvel finding success with their B team. People knew the Hulk, the Lou Ferragamo Hulk. So there was a nostalgia value there. But Iron Man? Are you kidding? I knew Iron Man. But my first exposure to Iron Man was literally the comic where he decides to quit drinking. For some reason, I picked that one up. I didn't know what that symbol meant, where it's an adult storyline, and I read that. I'm like, this is not what I was expecting in a superhero. And so my first impressions of Iron Man were negative, and that's nobody's fault. Luck of the draw, I came in and picked up the wrong comic. But Iron Man hits, and all of a sudden, boom! Now, the Incredible Hulk hit at the same time, and nobody cared about it. Ang Lee's Incredible Hulk hit, nobody cared about it. It is a tragedy, and it's tough to write a good one, so I'm not gonna come out against either of those directors. But with Iron Man's success, and then Captain America and Thor and all those, these were unlikely heroes, but they were very well relatable. And they were the B team. They were definitely not the stars. There's all sorts of other characters like Vision. I knew Vision could be popular. Again, from the 80s, I would read Avengers comics. I knew the idea would be popular, but you have to figure out how to make him like Data, which is relatable, but not like Commander Data from Star Trek, because he needs to stand out on his own. And I think Paul Bettany did a good job of playing him as sympathetic. Then they started thinking, we got a winning formula. We can do this with everybody. And then they started going down, everything we produce makes $1 billion, so, here's Ant-Man. Uh, I can't fix Ant-Man. I don't begrudge the actor. I just think they need to spend more time on the scripts, and doesn't need to be him in the quantum realm or running around with ants or stuff like that. Like, you need to develop. He would have been a good, what are they, 6-part miniseries? I think Ant-Man would have been a good one of those. But even those are losing their luster because they're going too far afield. I think Ironheart is going to work, depending on how they do it. Ironheart in the comics is a child genius who's sponsored by Tony Stark, and she manages to come up with her own Iron Woman suit. Um, and yeah, she's learning her way to be a superhero. Now, Marvel's already explored that dynamic with Spider-Man. So you got to give Riri Williams, who is Ironheart, a chance. I say you start her off as a child prodigy. Now, you can't use Tony Stark because Robert Downey Jr. is done, and he probably command half the movie's budget. See, that's the problem. We want to see the big stars, but they cost so much money. And then your movie winds up costing $223 million. It needs to make $500 million, $1 billion, just so it can have a chance of breaking even. So you got to figure out another way to. Maybe she's seen Iron Man, she's inspired by it, and then where she gets her funding, I don't know. Maybe you can have, Gwyneth Paltrow, who played Tony Stark's wife. Can't remember the character. She sees the little girl and sponsors her, and have it like a mother-daughter relationship. Don't do this power trip thing where the girl's got to do everything better. Show Riri Williams growing as Ironheart. And, she's told, don't get involved, just develop your technology. But she's got the heart of gold. She sees a little old lady being robbed or something, and she gets involved. And there's that whole dynamic, you're grounded, go to your room. She says, you can't ground me. I wrote the software or something like that. And then you get this little badass moment. Here I am, pitching ideas. Remember, I am an author. I do have works published and for sale. And that's why I'm looking at these movies and saying, hey, I can write better. I'm not saying that from a stance of ignorance. I'm just saying, you know what, just minor tweaks, and you can make this stuff work. Let's let go of the fantasy of women just naturally being better than men. Do you know why the original Mulan movie worked so well? Because Mulan worked her tail off. She got her butt kicked. She had to hide the fact she was a woman, and she was a sympathetic character. But when they did the live action, while I appreciate the cast, I appreciate all the actors and actresses and everything in it, The plot just failed them because all of a sudden she's a superstar from the very beginning. Character development is a thing. And we're forgetting that in the modern age. Give us a movie we can all get behind, and I'm sure it'll work well. But you gotta avoid the power fantasy because, unfortunately, know your audience. And like I said, my woman, my wife, my lovely lady likes watching Pierce Brosnan, likes watching Benedict Cumberbatch. Well, you know what? I'm secure enough in my manhood to say these are very attractive men. I, they seem to be personable enough that if they came over and asked for a beer, I would absolutely give it to them. And I'd love the chance to talk to them. Nothing wrong with either of those two actors. And you know what? They managed to bridge that special James Bond gap that I think only Daniel Craig has managed to fit into, where, well, actually, sorry, Benedict Cumberbatch didn't do any James Bond stuff, sorry, but you know what I'm saying. I'm comparing them. They've managed to bridge that special gap where, men are respectful of them and their work, but still women enjoy them. Timothy Dalton, actor, was great. If you cut out the noise and you look at his works in Flash Gordon and James Bond, he's a good Bond. The plots are terrible. Just abominable crap. And it's unfortunate because, again, I think he's a good Bond. Lazenby, I think, was a good Bond, but he only did one, so we'll never know. But all these people were put in a position where you get your men action stars that are there, and the women are there to get their eye candy and to enjoy a decent performance. Although the the plots, even in the 60s, as sexist as they are, you're looking at Sean Connery walking around with women like Chew Me, because I'm not going to make fun of the other one. And he's just treating them like, oh, can your woman make a coffee? And it turns out the woman's an expert assassin or something. But they snuck that in there. And if you watch it the first time, well, I didn't watch it for the first time. Yeah, you're thinking, these women are just putting up with crap. And then you realize, oh, it's subtle, where most of them are actually, some of them, yes, they're saying, I guess you could call me whatever's girlfriend, you know. But she's reluctant and she's looking to escape and she'll do anything in her power to escape. The women are actually incredibly strong in most of well, until you get to the 80s where you get the scream queens involved. And that's what we need to think about. We can portray all the things that have been done better. It's not even a big deal. I changed 3 things about Star Trek Into Darkness and made what I think would be a substantially improved movie. Now, if you're a Hollywood producer out there listening, number 1, you're hard up for ideas. Number 2, I'm not going to say I'll never work for you, but at the same token, I'm more of a writer, so I won't be directing anytime soon. With that, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please like, share, because sharing is caring, subscribe. Now, I have become aware that the bell icon and the subscribe icon both feature notifications under them. And different browsers display different things. So instead of just saying hit the bell icon, I'm going to say turn on notifications because apparently everybody is seeing something different. And I don't want you frustrating yourself in case yours happens to be the system that doesn't display the bell icon. With that, this has been the Silverlight Show. Please have a fantastic day.